Welcome to the deep dive. So today we have some really, foundational material to explore. It's a discussion about the very first chapter of the book of Genesis. And I think, we've all heard it before, but
Yeah, the creation story, right.
exactly. But we're not just going to rehash the story, are we? I think we want to actually dig deeper. What are the core ideas being presented here? And what could they possibly mean for us?
Yeah, exactly. You've shared some sources that go into a pretty fascinating back and forth about this ancient text. And it's not just about the order of creation. It's what does it tell us about purpose
Yeah.
and design? I mean, humanity's place in this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
The cosmos, all that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So the very first verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Right off the bat, boom, right.
It's so powerful, isn't it?
It is. It's just God is the ultimate source. Everything comes from this. There's no oh, and then, or, any kind of pre-existing anything. Just God created it.
Exactly. It's there's no prior stuff, right? That God is the ultimate source. And it's presented as this one act, like the singular creative act.
Yeah.
And then we get to the description of the initial state of the earth, and it's without form and void. What do you think about that?
Without form and void, that's kind of I don't know. What does void even mean?
Well, it could be interpreted as this kind of primordial chaos,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like a lack of structure, a lack of differentiation.
Uh-huh.
And so everything that follows, all these subsequent acts of creation, they're essentially bringing order to this initial chaos, this lack of structure. So it's like God is shaping it, right?
Right. Yeah, totally. And so the first move in bringing order is the separation of light from darkness. Let there be light. Poof, light exists. Just like that.
It's a command, right? That's a simple divine command, and boom, light. It's so fundamental. I mean, think about it. Light is the basis of so much of our existence, and it's right there at the very beginning.
Totally. Yeah. I never thought of it that way before. So it's not just about physical light, right? It's the first act of differentiation.
Exactly. Because remember, before this, it's undifferentiated. It's void. It's formless. And now we have this distinction.
Yeah.
Light and darkness.
Yeah.
And then that separation becomes the first day and night.
Right.
It marks the beginning of time, but not just time. Time is this cyclical, ordered phenomenon.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So from formlessness, we go to light, and then we even get time itself, the concept of time.
Exactly.
So cool. And then on day 2, we get another separation, the creation of the firmament, which is described as dividing the waters above from the waters below. And, thinking about how people understood the universe back then, it paints a very specific picture, this kind of structure being imposed on everything.
Right. And it's important to remember, what the firmament meant back then, right? It wasn't just the sky. It was, in ancient cosmology, this solid dome separating the waters above, which you could think of as rain and stuff, right?
Yeah.
From the waters below, the seas and even subterranean waters. And this separation, this division, is again, this emphasis on organization, on creating boundaries within this created realm.
That's really fascinating. So on day 3, things get, pretty pivotal for life as we know it. God gathers the waters and boom, dry land appears.
Right. Earth and seas, the stage is being set,
Yeah, prepping for what's to come.
And then what happens next is so crucial. God tells the earth to bring forth vegetation. Plants, herbs, trees. And not just any plants, but plants that can reproduce.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's this intentional creation of a life-sustaining environment. It's not enough to just have the physical space. Now it's being endowed with the means to support life.
It's such a methodical progression, right? From the basic elements to this, beginning of life. When you lay it out like this, it really emphasizes this idea that it's a deliberate process, not some random just, bang, it happened.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the foundations of the earth and we have the beginnings of life. And then on day 4, the narrative shifts to the celestial realm. God creates the sun, moon, and stars. And it's interesting, right? It's not just about light. It's also about signs and seasons and for days and years.
Right. There's this functional purpose.
Right.
They're not just there to look pretty. They mark time. They guide agricultural cycles.
Right.
And they provide this predictable order to the natural world.
Right.
It's the earthly realm is being connected to this larger cosmic framework.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how everything is interconnected. And then on day 5, the focus is on populating the structured environment with life, with living creatures. God creates the sea creatures and the birds, filling the waters and the skies.
And again, we see that recurring theme of blessing in verse 22. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. It's not just about creating life. It's about giving it this inherent capacity to flourish, to expand.
Yeah, that inherent potential. It's a really cool idea to think about. So then we arrive at day 6. This is the culmination, where God creates the land animals, each according to its kind. And then the big one, right? The creation of humanity. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. And, the sources you shared, they really highlighted this whole discussion around that plural us. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah. So that plural, right? Let us make man. It's a really interesting detail, and it's led to a lot of different interpretations. Some theological perspectives. They see it as like a reference to a divine council. Yeah. Right. And this particularly significant in Christianity. It's seen as a kind of foreshadowing of the Trinity, which is the idea that God is 3 distinct persons: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But all one God, right? So that us could be hinting at that. There are other interpretations, of course. Some people think it's just like a royal we, like how a king might say we, even though they're just one person. Or maybe it's like an address to some kind of heavenly beings. But I mean, the sources you send, they really delved into all these different viewpoints, and it shows how complex just this one little phrase can be.
It's amazing how much can be packed into just a few words. And so right after this creation in God's image, we get the creation of both male and female.
Yes. It's like right from the start, there's this emphasis on the completeness, the diversity within humanity.
Yeah. And then we get another blessing, this time specifically for humankind. Be fruitful and multiply, but also to have dominion over the rest of creation. And that word dominion, it's been interpreted in so many ways throughout history, hasn't it? What did your sources say about that?
Yeah, they definitely touched on that, that tension that exists. Because on the one hand, you could see dominion as a license to just exploit everything, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, it could be about responsibility, about careful stewardship. Like, humans are the caretakers, reflecting God's own care for creation. And historically, both of those interpretations have been used to justify very different actions.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you think about, our role today. What are our ethical obligations, towards the environment, towards all the other living beings?
Right. It really raises those questions for all of us, about how we understand our relationship with the natural world.
It does. Okay, so moving on. After the creation of humans, we see God providing sustenance, like food, plants, herbs, trees, and it's for both humans and animals. Like, there's this sense that everyone's needs are being met, right?
Yeah, it paints this picture of a self-sustaining system. Everything is provided for.
That's right. And then at the end of the 6th day, after all of creation is complete, God looks at everything and says, it is very good. And, that seems even more significant than just good, which is what was said like after each of the previous stages, right?
Totally. Very good. Say a sense of completion in that, a wholeness, a harmony in the created order. It's like the final assessment, a declaration of perfection.
Like a final seal of approval.
Exactly. It really emphasizes that this wasn't some haphazard process. It was purposeful. It was orderly.
It was. So, thinking about this whole creation narrative, what are some of the big ideas that you would say really stand out?
Well, for me, what's most striking is the intentionality behind it all. It's like we go from this formless void to this incredibly intricate and ordered universe, and every step is deliberate. And then there's the unique status of humanity. Yeah. We're created in God's image, and that has huge implications, right? It means we have a particular role to play within creation.
Right, totally. And that recurring motif of blessing, it really underscores the dynamic nature of creation. It's not just static, right? Yeah. Like, God doesn't just create it and then walk away. There's this inherent potential for life to flourish, to multiply.
This is a beautiful picture of abundance.
It really is. And, ultimately what this narrative tells us is that the universe wasn't just some random accident. Right. It was created with a purpose, with a design. And that has profound implications for how we understand our place in it all.
Absolutely.
So just to bring it all together, our deep dive into Genesis chapter 1 has really highlighted this foundational narrative that emphasizes divine order, the intentionality behind creation, and humanity's unique role as beings created in God's image with this like specific responsibility of stewardship. It's a world that was brought into being, deliberately step by step, culminating in humankind with, this distinct blessing, but also this responsibility. And I mean, I think that's a lot to think about.
It is. It really makes you wonder, how does this idea of a deliberate and designed creation and our role within it, how does that influence your perspective on the world, on your place in it?
Yeah.
Today even? Like, what does it mean to consider yourself part of a larger framework, regardless of your personal beliefs about, the specifics of creation? It's a perspective to sit with.
It really is. And on that note, I think we'll wrap it up for today. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Thanks for listening.